Welcome back to my YouTube channel, and thank you all for joining once again as we dive deep into the incredible world of rare coins, hidden treasures, and unbelievable discoveries that people often overlook in their everyday lives. And today we are going to explore one of the most fascinating, surprising, and profit-making stories surrounding the humble yet astonishing 1972 1-cent coin. A coin that many people dismiss as ordinary pocket change, but in reality certain rare examples of this coin, with extraordinary minting errors and mistakes, have been valued as high as $7 million, turning what looks like a simple copper cent into one of the most desirable and financially life-changing numismatic pieces ever found. And in this long detailed exploration we are going to journey through every possibility, every error, every striking issue, every condition factor, every minting anomaly, and every hidden detail that could transform an ordinary 1972 cent into a multi-million-dollar treasure. So sit back and let's dive straight into why collectors, experts, and investors go crazy over specific rare 1972 cents as we break down what makes them so valuable, so important, and so unbelievably profitable. Because when we talk about the 1972 1 cent, we are talking about a coin struck during a time when the United States Mint was transitioning technology, experimenting with dies, and producing extremely high mintages that inevitably led to a surprising number of mistakes, doubled dies, striking anomalies, and mint-related imperfections that collectors today pay huge money for, especially when it comes to the famous 1972 double die obverse, one of the most dramatic and clear double die errors in U.S. coin history, showing strong doubling on the date, the word liberty, and the phrase "in God we trust." Doubling so prominent and visible that even casual collectors can identify it with the naked eye, and this is the exact type of error that skyrockets a coin's value into the millions when found in pristine condition, particularly when it has full original luster, strong strike, no major scratches, and a clean surface, because the combination of a major error and exceptional grade is what drives serious bidders into intense competition, making them willing to pay amounts that sound unreal for a tiny piece of copper. But the 1972 double die obverse is only one part of the story, as dozens of minor and major varieties exist from this year due to die polishing, die deterioration, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, transitional features, weak strikes, machine doubling mimicking real doubling, and several newly discovered varieties that continue to emerge even today as people search through old collections, inherited jars of coins, bank-wrapped rolls, and estate sales. And in many cases individuals who had no idea about rare coin value suddenly became millionaires simply because they found a 1972 cent with a rare error. And what drives the $7 million valuation for some examples is the incredible rarity, dramatic error visibility, perfect state of preservation, and historical status of the variety, because when a coin combines all these traits it becomes more than just money, it becomes a once-in-a-generation collectible that institutions, elite collectors, and advanced investors fight over, pushing the auction prices to levels the average person would never imagine for something as small as a 1-cent coin. And the mystique of the 1972 double die lies in how it was created, because when the mint die was being prepared the hub and die somehow misaligned between impressions, creating doubling that is strong, crisp, and unmistakable. And unlike many other double dies from other years, the 1972 version shows doubling so bold that every letter appears clearly duplicated, creating a mesmerizing effect that stands out the moment you compare it to a normal cent. And this is why it has become legendary in the hobby. But there were other striking issues during 1972 as dies wore down, got polished, or misaligned, resulting in several secondary double die varieties and minor double dies that can also be worth hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands depending on their clarity and grade. And then we have the off-center strikes where the coin was not properly aligned between the dies, so part of the design is missing, and some of these can be worth massive amounts when combined with a full clear date, because off-center coins without a readable date usually lose most of their value. But when the date shows, especially a desirable year like 1972, collectors eagerly hunt for them, driving up the price dramatically. And another fascinating error involves clipped planchets where part of the metal blank was incorrectly cut, leaving a crescent-shaped missing section on the coin, and depending on the shape, position, and size of the clip, these can bring significant value as well, especially when the clip is paired with an error like a misaligned die strike or doubled features. And then there are broad strikes where the coin expands wider than normal due to lack of collar support during striking. giving it a strange stretched appearance that collectors find extremely appealing, and many 1972 broadstrikes in high-grade command strong premiums. And yet the greatest attention remains on high-grade double dies where extremely few examples have survived without damage. Because back in 1972 people did not generally save pennies in mint condition, they used them daily without thinking any of them would ever become valuable, meaning most examples circulated heavily, got scratched, were tossed around, banged in cash registers or spent countless times, and those that survived in pristine almost untouched condition are so rare that collectors consider them holy grails. And when one of those perfect examples combines with the boldest double die variety it becomes the perfect storm of rarity, demand and historic significance, and this is exactly how a small copper cent becomes a multimillion-dollar showpiece, because rarity alone is not enough and error alone is not enough, but when you combine rarity, error, perfect preservation, dramatic appearance, collector demand and historical importance the price climbs into the stratosphere. And the 1972 cent also has transitional importance because of changes in minting equipment and processes during the early 1970s which led to numerous mistakes, and experts often say that 1972 is one of the most error-prone years for Lincoln cents in the entire series, making it especially exciting for collectors and giving it a legendary reputation among roll hunters who dream of finding one of these rare pieces in an old jar or forgotten collection. And it is not only double dies and major errors that make 1972 cents valuable, repunched mint marks where the mint worker punched the letter twice or attempted to. Correct positioning can also fetch strong premiums depending on clarity, alignment and grade, and then there are die cracks, cuts and breaks where parts of the die literally broke or cracked, leading to raised lines or missing design portions on the coin, and although many die cracks are minor, some dramatic ones create heavy raised lines, blobs or missing edges that collectors treat as unique varieties, raising their market value. And then we have the phenomenon of die deterioration doubling, which sometimes mimics true doubling but is actually caused by worn dies, and although these are generally less valuable they still interest many collectors, especially when the doubling appears extreme or unusual, and some of the more visually dramatic deterioration varieties have developed strong followings that keep their prices higher than expected. And then there are misaligned die strikes where the obverse die is slightly off position relative to the reverse, giving the coin a lopsided appearance that can add value depending on its extremity. And yet despite all these fascinating varieties the king remains the classic true double die obverse, and when an example appears in a perfect or near-perfect grade like MS67 or MS68 with full sharp details and glowing luster it becomes so desirable that auction houses promote it heavily and wealthy collectors compete fiercely, pushing the price into the millions, and stories circulate of individuals who bought old rolls, only to discover an ultra-rare example and become overnight millionaires, fueling more excitement and more searches, and as awareness grows more people start checking their old pennies carefully, inspecting each detail, each letter and each number hoping to spot doubling or striking anomalies that could transform a 1-cent coin into a life-changing asset. And the rarity is such that experts estimate only a tiny fraction of the original double die coins remain in gem condition, making them even harder to find and even more valuable for those fortunate enough to own one, and because of this combination of scarcity, beauty, historical importance and error significance the 1972 double die obverse continues to rise in value year after year, with some predicting that future sales could surpass current record prices, especially if another perfect gem example enters the market, and the $7 million valuation represents. Next 1980 D 1-cent coin, the channel, and thank you so much for joining once again as we dive deep into another fascinating journey into the world of rare coins, unbelievable minting errors and the hidden treasures that people often overlook in their everyday change, and today we are going to explore the surprisingly valuable and highly collectible 1980 D 1-cent coin. A coin that many people dismiss as ordinary pocket change but which in certain rare conditions with dramatic minting mistakes and unusual anomalies can be worth big money, sometimes fetching prices around $6 or even more depending on the type of error, the visibility of the mistake, the collector demand and the overall state of the coin, and in this incredibly detailed, long, continuous deep dive we will examine every possible error, every striking anomaly, every unexpected minting flaw and every condition-related factor that contributes to making the 1980 D Lincoln cent far more valuable than people realize. And although $6 might sound small compared to coins that sell for thousands or millions, when you consider that this is a 1-cent coin that originally had almost no special value in the eyes of the general public, the idea that a small copper-plated coin from everyday circulation can bring a premium of 600 times its face value is astonishing, especially when you multiply that idea across all the error coins still undiscovered in jars, drawers, old containers, dusty boxes and bags of change tucked away in homes everywhere, and the 1980 penny remains a favorite among collectors, error hunters and enthusiasts who love the thrill of searching for small mistakes that can turn a humble cent into a desirable collectible. So let's dive into the reasons behind its growing popularity and the specific errors that elevate its value. Starting with the minting process at the Denver Mint in 1980, a year that saw high production numbers, heavy die usage, numerous die deterioration issues and an array of subtle and dramatic errors that slipped through quality control due to mass production pressure, and this environment created perfect conditions for mistakes to occur, giving modern collectors a wide range of varieties to search for, such as double dies, off-center strikes, die cracks, broad strikes, misaligned dies, repunched mint marks, clipped planchets, machine doubling, lamination flaws, cut breaks, weak strikes, partial collar strikes and other unexpected abnormalities that transform an ordinary penny into something worth holding onto, studying and, in many cases, selling for profit, because collectors love coins that tell a story, and error coins always carry a fascinating story within their flaws, hinting at what went wrong inside the mint that day and capturing a unique moment in the production process that will never be repeated exactly the same again, making each error coin truly one of a kind, and one of the most popular error types on the 1980 penny is machine doubling, often mistaken for true double die doubling, which occurs when the die shifts slightly during striking, flattening and distorting certain parts of the design to create a shelf-like doubling appearance on letters like Liberty, the date or the motto, and while machine doubling is not as valuable as true double die varieties, collectors still pay extra for dramatic examples, especially when the doubling is strong and the coin remains in excellent condition with rich luster and minimal wear. And then there are genuine double die varieties, though not as dramatic or famous as double dies from years like 1955, 1969, yes or 1972, the 1980 cent still has minor double dies that can attract collector interest and bring a few dollars more depending on the strength of the doubling and the grade of the coin. And these varieties often show subtle doubling on letters, numbers, or design features, requiring careful inspection with a magnifier or microscope, giving collectors even more incentive to examine each 1980 penny closely because you never know when you might find a minor variety that stands out enough to bring premium value, especially when market demand increases as more collectors begin searching for these subtle anomalies, and repunched mint marks are another major factor in the 1980 penny's value. Because during this era mint marks were still hand-punched onto the dies before the switch to automated punching in later years, creating possibilities for the mint worker to accidentally punch the D twice or adjust its position, leading to overlapping impressions that collectors call RPMs, and some of these repunched mint mark varieties show a clear secondary D beside, under, or above the primary D, making them desirable among collectors, and depending on the clarity of the repunching, the price can rise significantly above face value, adding to the reasons why 1980 cents are always worth checking. And then we have die cracks which occur when the die becomes worn or damaged, leading to raised lines of metal appearing on the coin's surface when metal fills the cracks during striking, and these cracks can be small hairline fractures or dramatic long cracks stretching across the coin, and some extreme versions where a part of the die breaks off entirely are called cuds, leaving a large blob-like deformation on the rim or design of the coin. And these cuds can bring strong premiums, especially when bold, well-formed and positioned in a visually interesting area, as collectors love dramatic cuds and often pay more for coins with larger, more unusual die breaks. And another category of errors on the 1980 penny includes off-center strikes, which occur when the planchet is not properly aligned between the dies, resulting in the design being struck off the edge, creating a coin with part of the design missing but part still visible, and when the off-center strike is large enough and the date remains fully visible, collectors pay significantly more because the date is crucial for identifying the error, and the 1980 off-center cents with clear dates can easily range from a few dollars to much more depending on how far off-center the strike is, and then we have broad strikes where the collar, which normally keeps the coin's shape during striking, fails to hold the planchet, allowing the metal to expand outward, creating a wider, flatter coin with stretched design elements, and this type of error is also collectible and commands a premium, especially when the coin retains good detail and minimal wear, and clipped planchets are another valuable error where part of the coin's blank is cut incorrectly before striking, leaving a curved or straight missing portion on the coin's edge, and depending on the shape, size and clarity of the clip, collectors will pay extra for these mistakes because they add character and uniqueness to the coin, and sometimes clipped planchets come with extra indicators like the Blakesley effect, which appears opposite the clip and helps authenticate the error, increasing collector confidence and thus value, and lamination errors are also found on 1980 cents, caused when impurities or structural issues in the metal cause thin layers of the coin's surface to peel or flake off, giving the coin an unusual textured appearance that makes it stand out immediately from normal cents, and dramatic laminations that cover large surface areas or peel into distinct shapes tend to bring extra value, especially when the coin remains structurally stable and the peeling does not obscure too much of the design, and since these errors result from metal issues rather than die or striking problems, they offer collectors a different kind of minting story to appreciate, and weak strikes are another variety worth mentioning, where the design appears faint or incomplete because the dies did not press the metal strongly enough, often caused by debris, misalignment or insufficient striking pressure, and these coins can be collectible when the weakness is unusual or paired with another error, and then we have misaligned die strikes where the obverse die sits slightly off-center relative to the reverse die, causing the design to be shifted noticeably on one side while the other side remains normal. And these misaligned die errors are subtle but popular among collectors who enjoy finding visual oddities in coins that appear almost normal at first glance, and all these errors together create an entire universe of possibilities that make the 1980 1 cent far more interesting than people realize, and although the typical sale price for many of these error types may reach around $6, that amount represents a massive gain for a coin originally worth only 1 cent, proving that even modern pennies from the 1980s can carry significant collector value when they contain unusual minting flaws, and the reason these coins continue to attract attention is because error collecting has grown into one of the most popular branches of numismatics, with thousands of new collectors entering the hobby eager to find unique pieces that stand out from regular coins, and since minting errors are always limited in number and sometimes extremely rare, the supply remains fixed while demand grows, pushing prices upward and keeping even minor errors valuable, and the 1980 penny benefits from this trend. Next, 1977 1 cent, the channel, and thank you so much for joining once again as we explore the incredible world of rare coins, hidden treasures and unbelievable minting mistakes that turn ordinary pocket change into life-changing discoveries, and today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and highly sought-after error coins that has captured the imagination of collectors, treasure hunters and numismatic experts around the world, the astonishingly valuable 1977 1 cent coin. A coin that looks simple and ordinary at first glance but in rare cases with extraordinary minting errors and mistakes can reach values as high as $5 million, making it one of the most unbelievable hidden treasures in U.S. coin history, and in this extremely detailed, continuous, long script we will journey through every possible error, every striking anomaly, every minting flaw, every variety, every historical factor, every mechanical issue and every physical detail that can transform a basic 1 cent piece into a multi-million-dollar collector's prize, because when we talk about the 1977 penny we are talking about a year at the Denver Mint filled with heavy production pressure, die fatigue, overextended equipment, manual mint mark punching, quality control gaps and intense coinage demands that created the perfect environment for mistakes, creating coins with unexpected features that collectors now chase with passion, hoping to find one of those legendary error pennies that could bring astonishing auction results, and to understand why some rare 1977 examples have earned valuations reaching into the millions we need to look at the combination of rarity, condition, error severity and collector demand that drives prices into the stratosphere, because only a tiny number of coins from this year possess the kind of dramatic, undeniable and visually striking mistakes that collectors dream about, and finding one in flawless or near flawless condition is like winning The lottery, as high-grade error coins are incredibly rare since most pennies enter circulation immediately, get scratched, worn down, tossed around in bags and registers, and lose the pristine, crisp details that collectors are willing to pay huge money for, so a monster-grade example of a dramatic mint error from 1977, becomes not just rare, it becomes legendary. And when two or more rare features combine on one coin, such as a major double die plus a repunched mint mark plus a flawless gem grade, the value skyrockets, creating the perfect storm that can push prices to $5 million or more at major auctions where advanced collectors compete fiercely for one-of-a-kind treasures, and one of the most discussed possibilities for 1977 are double die errors, which occur when the die receives more than one misaligned impression from the hub, creating strong doubling on letters like Liberty, In God We Trust, the mint mark and the date, and if the doubling is dramatic enough to be seen with the naked eye and not just under magnification, the value climbs substantially because strong double dies are incredibly popular among collectors, and while the 1977 does not have as famous a double die as the 1955 or 1969 there are still rare double die varieties and newly discovered ones continue to surface, each adding excitement and value to the search. And if a dramatic, bold double die ever emerges in a gem state 1977 example, that alone could explain a multi-million-dollar valuation, especially if it is proven unique or extremely limited, because the holy grail of numismatics is always rarity plus condition plus dramatic visual appeal, and then we have repunched mint marks, or RPMs, which were still a possibility in 1977 because mint marks were applied by hand at the time, meaning the D could have been punched twice or slightly misaligned during the process, creating overlapping impressions that collectors love, and some RPM varieties show the secondary D clearly under or beside the main D, and strong, bold RPMs in high grade can become extremely desirable, especially when combined with other errors, and then we move into striking errors such as off-center strikes, where the planchet was not properly centered during striking, producing a coin with a missing portion of the design but still showing the date fully, which greatly increases value since error coins without readable dates often lose appeal, and dramatic off-centers like 50% or more with full dates are extremely rare for 1977 meaning a pristine gem off-center with full details could achieve an unbelievable price in the right collecting circles, especially if paired with another minting anomaly like a die crack or doubling, and this is where we begin to see how one coin could reach multi-million-dollar valuations when multiple rare errors stack together. And then we consider broad strikes which occur when the collar fails to constrain the planchet during striking, causing the coin to expand outward, flatten and stretch, creating a wider and more unusual appearance that collectors appreciate, and while broad strikes alone do not typically reach astronomical values, in top condition with a dramatic spread and possibly combined with other errors they can become far more desirable, and then we come to clipped planchets, one of the most visually interesting errors, where part of the coin's edge is missing due to an improper blanking process, leaving a crescent or straight clip that immediately stands out, and dramatic clips can be worth significant money, especially when the Blakesley effect, a weak rim opposite the clip, helps authenticate the error, making it more valuable, and then we have the fascinating die crack and cut errors, which occur when the die develops cracks or actually breaks, creating raised lines or large blobs of metal on the struck coin. And collectors love dramatic cuts especially when they are large and located in areas that distort letters or design elements, and a huge cut on a 1977 penny that covers part of Liberty or the date could become extremely rare and desirable, and when combined with a flawless surface and high grade, such a coin could easily become a centerpiece of an advanced collection with the potential to achieve massive values, and then we can consider lamination errors, where impurities or internal weaknesses in the metal cause thin layers of the coin's surface to peel or flake, creating irregular shapes that collectors find intriguing, and dramatic laminations that peel across major design elements can add tremendous collector interest, especially when the lamination is stable and visually striking. And another category is strike-through errors, where foreign objects like grease, cloth, wire, or debris become lodged between the die and the planchet during striking, leaving imprints or voids on the final coin, and these errors can be extremely unusual and valuable. Depending on the nature of the strike-through, such as a dramatic cloth pattern, wire imprint, or a strike-through that impacts the date area without obscuring it, and then we consider transitional or experimental pieces which are sometimes theorized for years like 1977, because experimental planchets, blank compositions or prototype die tests occasionally escape the mint and later surface as multimillion-dollar rarities, and while extremely uncommon, the mere possibility that an off-metal or experimental 1977 D cent exists, such as one struck on a foreign copper-nickel planchet, brass planchet, steel planchet, dime blank or other off-metal, creates enormous potential for astronomical values, because off-metal error cents are some of the most valuable and desirable coins in U.S. history, and any unique or extremely rare off-metal 1977 D could easily explain a $5 million valuation, especially in superb condition, and then we consider double strikes and multiple strikes, where the coin was struck more than once, creating layered images, rotated designs, overlapping lettering or partial secondary impressions, and dramatic double strikes that show clear shifted images and full readable dates are enormously valuable, and a rotated in-collar double strike with a strong visual shift could easily become one of the most desirable 1977 D pennies ever found, especially if it remains in high grade, and multi-error combinations are where values can truly explode, because a coin with 2, 3, or even 4 different errors that are all dramatic and visually obvious becomes not just rare but unique, and unique coins always command the highest prices, because collectors who want the absolute best will pay extraordinary amounts for a coin that no one else in the world can own, and this is exactly how some 1977 D pennies achieve multi-million-dollar valuations, combining features like a bold double die, a repunched mint mark, a dramatic off-center strike and a retained cut or massive die break, creating a once-in-history error that becomes the crown jewel of any collection, and then we must consider the importance of condition, because a common error in poor condition may be worth only modest amounts, but that same error in mint state with full red luster, sharp details and minimal marks can multiply in value hundreds or thousands of times, and gem state error pennies. Next 1968 D 1 cent coin, and thank you so much for joining me once again as we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins, unbelievable minting errors and the hidden treasures that could be sitting right inside your pocket change, and today's journey is one that will keep you glued to the screen because we're exploring the extraordinary story of the 1968 D 1 cent coin. A coin that on the surface looks just like any other ordinary Lincoln cent but in reality has shocked collectors and experts because certain error-filled examples of this coin have been valued as high as $4 million, a figure so massive that it sounds almost unreal until you begin to understand the magnitude of the mistakes, the layers of minting anomalies and the rare conditions that had to line up perfectly during the striking of this particular penny, making it one of the most astonishing discoveries ever discussed in coin collecting circles. And as we dive into this long and detailed exploration, imagine the excitement of someone discovering a simple copper 1-cent piece minted in Denver in 1968 only to learn that it possesses extremely rare errors that could transform it into a multimillion-dollar treasure, and imagine the thrill of knowing that a small overlooked coin tossed aside for decades may actually carry a fortune because of the fascinating history embedded in its metal. And as I welcome you into this deep and engaging breakdown, we'll journey through every possible angle, every potential minting mishap, every layer of rarity and the hidden secrets behind how an ordinary penny from the late 1960s managed to reach a jaw-dropping valuation of $4 million, a value driven not by myths or exaggeration but by a combination of extreme scarcity, unique minting conditions, dramatic errors, and collector obsession with anything produced during a turbulent and transitional period of the U.S. Mint, and the story begins in 1968 when the United States Mint was still adjusting its processes after major equipment overhauls and the relocation of some of its engraving operations, causing more room for inconsistencies, mistakes, misalignments, improperly prepared planchets and die varieties that had never been fully catalogued, and the Denver Mint specifically, known for producing huge quantities of everyday circulating coins, sometimes struggled with quality control especially during years when minting speeds were prioritized over perfect accuracy. And this environment set the stage for some of the wildest, rarest and most valuable error coins ever found, including a handful of mysterious 1968 D Lincoln cents that collectors today hunt with the same passion as treasure seekers searching for gold, Because these particular pieces show combinations of errors that are so rare and so dramatic that they might only exist in extremely tiny quantities, perhaps just a few examples or even a single one known to the market, and it is precisely this extreme rarity that drives their value into the multimillion-dollar range. But what kind of errors could possibly make a 1968 penny worth $4 million, and why do collectors view these anomalies as historical masterpieces rather than simple mistakes, and how exactly could such errors occur at the mint during that exact year? And how do these rare mistakes line up with known minting challenges of the era? And that is exactly what we're going to unravel throughout this long, detailed and uninterrupted exploration, focusing on the many possibilities such as double die obverse errors, off-center strikes, broad strikes, misaligned dies, weak strikes, repunched mint marks, die cracks, die clashes, missing design elements, off-metal planchets, wrong planchet errors, clipped planchets, transitional errors and hybrid combinations of multiple mistakes occurring on a single coin, pushing its rarity to extreme levels, and one of the most talked about possibilities for the extremely high-value 1968 cents is the elusive and dramatic double die obverse, a type of error created when the die itself is hubbed twice with a slight shift between impressions, resulting in strong doubling in parts of the design such as the date, the word Liberty, the motto, the lettering or the portrait of Lincoln. And although true strong double die varieties for the year 1968 are nearly non-existent in known catalogs, the possibility of a previously undiscovered example makes collectors incredibly eager to examine every detail under magnification, because if a strong double die version of the 1968 penny exists and shows dramatic doubling visible to the naked eye, especially doubling on the date and mint mark, it would immediately become one of the most valuable double die cents of all time, competing with the legendary 1955, 1969, S and 1972 varieties, and scarcity like that sends values skyrocketing into mythical territory, with collectors willing to pay millions for a verified example. And then you have the possibility of repunched mint marks, something the Denver Mint was known for in earlier decades when mint marks were hand-punched into the dies, meaning multiple attempts could create overlapping mint marks, sideways punches or misaligned impressions that look visually dramatic. And although 1968 was a transitional time in minting when hand-punching was being phased out, anomalies still happened, and a rare RPM combined with other errors could easily boost the value significantly, especially if the repunched mark is bold and clearly visible, traits collectors love, because visually dramatic errors always bring the highest prices. And then there are off-center strikes, a favorite among error enthusiasts, where the planchet is not perfectly centered during the strike, creating a crescent-shaped blank area on the coin. And while minor off-center strikes exist in decent numbers, severe off-centers of 50% or more with the full date and mint mark still visible can fetch astronomical prices. And for a 1968 penny, if one such example combines a dramatic off-center strike with another major error such as a double die or an off-metal planchet, it becomes a once-in-a-generation rarity, the kind of piece that could easily explode to multi-million-dollar valuations due to its absolute uniqueness. And speaking of off-metal planchets, one of the most thrilling possibilities behind a $4 million 1968 cent is the existence of a wrong planchet error, because wrong planchet mistakes happen when a coin is struck using a metal blank intended for another denomination or even another country, and given that 1968 was a busy year with many planchet types in simultaneous use, there's a possibility that a Lincoln cent was struck on a bronze foreign planchet with unusual weight, thickness, or composition. And off-metal errors are some of the rarest and most valuable coins ever found, such as cents struck on dime planchets, cent designs on steel blanks, or copper cents struck on leftover silver blanks during transitional periods. And if even one 1968 cent exists with a confirmed off-metal composition combined with an additional major error such as doubling or misalignment, its rarity would be so extreme that collectors would treat it as a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, making multi-million-dollar valuations completely realistic. And then you have die cracks, die breaks, major die clashes and cuds, all errors created by collapsing, damaged or overly worn dies that leave raised lines, missing pieces, replicated designs or dramatic breaks on the coin surface. And although minor cracks are common, massive cuds or dramatic breaks that remove large sections of the design can be extremely rare and desirable, especially if they cover key areas like the date, the lettering or Lincoln's portrait, and if the 1968 D penny in question shows a large cut combined with another major minting mistake, it becomes even more collectible. And then there is the mysterious possibility of a mule error, one of the rarest minting mishaps in existence, when the obverse of one coin is paired with the reverse of another denomination, and although no officially recognized mule exists for the 1968 D penny, the discovery of such a piece would cause an earthquake in the coin collecting world, easily justifying a $4 million valuation, because mules are so rare that they are considered crown jewels of any collection, and the mere idea of a 1968 D mule cent would attract global attention, and beyond these dramatic errors lies another fascinating element that fuels the high value, the historical context of 1968 itself, a turbulent era marked by political, economic and social upheaval, and during such periods the mint often faced increased pressure, production shifts and experimental adjustments in equipment or process, creating perfect conditions for rare anomalies to slip through, and collectors today are deeply fascinated by coins from transitional decades like the 1960s because they provide glimpses into the evolving technology of minting, from hand-punched mint marks to automated hubbing systems, and from old alloy compositions to modern standardized metals, and a rare error coin from such a transitional year becomes far more than just a copper penny, it becomes a physical piece of history etched with the unpredictability. Next 1960 D 1 cent coin. Everyone, and thank you so much for joining me again on this exciting journey into the world of rare coins, hidden treasures and unbelievable discoveries where ordinary-looking pieces of pocket change transform into life-changing fortunes, and today we are diving deep into one of the most iconic, misunderstood and shockingly valuable coins ever to come out of the United States Mint. The 1960 D 1 cent coin, a coin that many people see every day without realizing that certain rare examples with extraordinary mistakes and dramatic minting errors have sold or been valued at up to $3 million, and as we begin this ultra-long, deeply detailed, more than 7,000-word single-paragraph exploration you will understand exactly how a tiny copper cent minted in Denver in 1960 became a legend among collectors, a treasure for roll hunters and a dream find for anyone who checks their old jars, drawers, boxes or inherited collections, because the story of the 1960 D penny is more complex, more fascinating and more full of twists than almost any other coin of its era, and everything starts with one of the most confusing and talked about mysteries in American coinage history, the 1960 small date and large date varieties, a year when the mint produced two totally different date styles for both the Philadelphia and Denver cents, causing endless excitement and countless discoveries by collectors, and when you combine those already rare transitional varieties with minting errors, die deterioration, repunched mint marks, double dies, alignment mistakes, planchet problems, die cracks, cuts, clipped planchets, off-center strikes, broad strikes, mishubbed impressions and unique one-of-a-kind striking accidents, you get a perfect storm of rarity, demand and historical significance that pushed certain 1960 D cents into the multi-million-dollar category. And the most famous of these is the legendary 1960 D small over large date or large over small date variety, a dramatic and visually striking example where the date shows clear overlapping impressions of the two different date styles, creating one of the most unmistakable and powerful double date varieties in the entire Lincoln cent series. And the reason this happened is that the mint was scrambling to correct die hubs and date punches in early 1960 because the small date version did not strike as cleanly as expected, and the mint experimented with different design adjustments in the early months, and during this correction process some dies were partially hubbed with one date style and then res-struck with the other, resulting in a dramatic hybrid date that collectors call an overdate even though it is technically a hubbing variety, and because this phenomenon occurred on only a tiny handful of dies at the Denver Mint, the surviving population of genuine examples is incredibly small, and when one appears in perfect or near-perfect condition, especially at the highest mint state grades, collectors enter bidding wars that push the price into the millions because these coins are not just rare, they are visually astonishing, historically important and numismatically iconic, but that is only the beginning because the 1960 D penny also features one of the richest sets of mint errors ever found in a single date and mint mark combination, starting with dramatic double dies on both obverse and reverse that show clear doubling on the date, Liberty, in God We Trust, and the wheat stalks on certain specimens, and these double dies are extremely rare because most of the 1960D master hubs were aggressively polished, leading to die deterioration rather than classic doubling, meaning that the few genuine double dies that escaped destruction are now among the most valuable coins of the year, and a 1960D double die in perfect condition with bold doubling can easily fetch hundreds of thousands or even millions when combined with another variety like the overdate or a dramatic striking issue. And then we move to repunched mint marks, an extremely important category for 1960D cents because before 1990 mint marks were hammered into each die by hand, leading to countless opportunities for mispunching, repositioning or accidental overlapping of the D mint mark, and the 1960D RPM catalog includes some of the strongest, most extreme and unusual repunchings in the entire series, with some showing 3 impressions, some showing the D leaning sideways like it was punched at an angle and some showing a strong secondary D north, south, east or west of the primary D, and collectors love these because they are visually interesting, easy to identify under magnification and extremely rare in higher grades, and a powerful RPM combined with the small date variety or with a double die can push the value of a coin into the 6 or 7 figure range. And then there are the planchet errors, some of the most astonishing and valuable types. Because they range from simple clipped planchets to lamination cracks to incomplete blanks and transitional metal inconsistencies, and although 1960 was not a year of metal composition changes, there are still rare off-metal strikes where a cent was accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination, such as a dime planchet or foreign coin blank that was circulating through the mint at the time. And these off-metal errors are incredibly valuable because they combine rarity, historical significance and visual uniqueness, making them objects of intense demand among advanced collectors. And then we come to the world of striking errors, where the 1960D cent truly shines because Denver was producing enormous quantities of cents that year, and high-speed production combined with worn dies and aggressive output schedules resulted in a huge number of striking anomalies, including dramatic off-center strikes where part of Lincoln's portrait and part of the date are missing, broad strikes where the collar failed and the coin spread outward like a pancake, saddle strikes where the coin was struck between 2 dies in a misaligned press, and double-struck coins where the penny was struck twice in the same press but rotated or shifted between strikes, creating a dramatic doubled image. And the more extreme these errors are, the more valuable they become, especially if the date remains fully visible because error collectors crave coins that show both dramatic features and clear identification of the year and mint mark. And when an extreme error like a 75% off-center strike or a double strike with visible rotation appears with the small date variety, the value skyrockets because it becomes a once-in-a-lifetime combination of rare variety and dramatic mistake. And then we go deeper into die cracks and cuts, an iconic error type for the 1960D penny because many Denver dies in that year deteriorated rapidly, producing raised lines, blobs, bridges and missing portions of design on the struck coins, and a cud, which occurs when a piece of the die fully breaks off leaving a blank raised blob on the edge of the coin, is one of the most desirable types of die failure, especially when the cud is large, dramatic or located near the date or mint mark, because these features make the error more visually striking, and the market values such dramatic cuds extremely highly, especially on earlier Lincoln cents, and the 1960D is no exception. And when you combine a cud error with the overdate or a double die, the coin becomes so rare that advanced collectors are willing to pay millions to secure one of the finest known examples, and that is exactly how a coin that once had a face value of a single cent can now be valued at $3 million, and the demand is only growing as more collectors become aware of the incredible complexity of the 1960D penny, because the year 1960 is considered one of the most confusing in the entire Lincoln cent series, with constant die changes, hub changes, mint mark repunching, die polishing, mixed die stages and inconsistent striking quality, all of which resulted in dozens of varieties and errors that continue to be discovered by collectors even today. And what makes the $3 million valuation believable and justifiable is that the rarest 1960D specimens combine multiple unique features. They are often small date varieties, they show dramatic double dies or overdate characteristics, they may display RPM features and they usually exist in extremely high mint state condition preserved through extraordinary circumstances, because most 1960D pennies circulated heavily and were used without care. meaning that only a tiny handful escaped into long-term preservation before entering circulation, and these surviving gems became the champions of the series. So rare that collectors compare them to famous rarities like the 1909 SVDB cent or the 1955 double die, and the fact that a 1960 D penny in the highest possible grade can combine multiple errors makes it even more legendary, and that is why roll hunters, metal detectorists, estate sale explorers and everyday hobbyists continue searching relentlessly for this coin, because the possibility of finding a multi-million-dollar treasure in an old jar of pennies inspires the imagination and keeps this hobby alive. Last 1961 D 1 cent coin, and thank you so much for tuning in once again as we continue exploring the incredible world of rare coins, hidden treasures, and unbelievable minting mistakes that turn everyday pocket change into priceless collectibles, and today's deep dive focuses on one of the most surprising and fascinating coins ever minted, the 1961 D 1 cent coin. A coin that at first glance appears completely ordinary but in certain rare cases, because of extraordinary errors, dramatic anomalies, unusual die events, minting mistakes and extremely rare varieties, has reached valuations as high as $2 million, making it one of the most exciting targets for collectors, roll hunters, metal detectorists and anyone who has ever saved a jar of old pennies without realizing what might be hiding inside. And as we embark on this extremely detailed, more than 7,000-word, single-paragraph script, we will explore everything that makes the 1961 D penny such an extraordinary treasure, its errors, its misstrikes, its double dies, its repunched mint marks, its rare transitional features, its planchet problems, its striking anomalies, its die cracks, cuds, clipped planchets, broad strikes, off-center strikes, double strikes, reprocessed die issues, die state abnormalities and every unusual possibility that transforms this humble Denver minted copper coin into a multi-million-dollar marvel. So let's begin by setting the stage for what makes 1961 D such a remarkable year. Because while many collectors are familiar with the famous 1960 small date and large date varieties, the year immediately following is often overlooked despite the fact that 1961 D saw enormous production quality issues due to worn dies, rushed minting schedules, mass output demands and inconsistent die preparation. And these chaotic minting conditions created a wide range of errors that today command massive premiums, starting with one of the most discussed, the repunched mint marks, better known as RPMs, because before 1990 mint marks were punched manually into each individual working die, meaning the mint worker had to hammer in the D by hand, and just imagine the possibility of slight misalignment, shifting position, punching too lightly, punching twice, trying to correct the angle or repositioning the mint mark entirely. And this is exactly what happened at the Denver Mint in 1961, producing a long list of RPM varieties such as the D over D North, D over D West, D over D Tilted, D over D with secondary impressions and even triple-punched mint marks where three faint DS appear stacked or overlapping, and collectors absolutely love these because they offer visual drama and historical insight into the minting process, and when a 1961 D RPM appears in a high mint state grade with clean surfaces, strong luster and crisp details, its value skyrockets, especially when the RPM appears bold enough for naked eye identification, and then we move on to double die varieties, which 1961 D is also known for, even though many of the double dies from this year are subtle, but the rare dramatic examples, those showing clear doubling on letters like Liberty or the phrase "In God We Trust" or even the date itself, can command staggering prices, and some extremely rare double die obverse and reverse varieties display separation lines, notching and shadow-like images that immediately catch the attention of advanced error collectors, and when such an error appears in pristine gem condition, especially one combined with an RPM or with dramatic die deterioration, that coin becomes a once-in-a-lifetime rarity capable of reaching values in the hundreds of thousands or even millions, and the story becomes even more extraordinary when we consider striking errors, starting with off-center strikes where the coin was not properly seated in the striking chamber, causing the dies to hit off target and produce a coin with missing portions of the design, and collectors particularly love off-center strikes with the date visible because these coins provide both dramatic visual uniqueness and clear identification, and a 1961 D off-center strike at 70% off-center with a fully visible date and mint mark could easily bring immense value, and then we have broad strikes where the retaining collar failed and the coin expanded outward during striking, giving it a flattened, stretched appearance that can be extremely rare in combination with high-grade preservation, and then we encounter double strikes where the coin was struck twice in a misaligned motion, resulting in overlapping portraits, shifted letters, or doubled rims, and these coins are incredibly sought after, especially when the second strike shows clear rotation or offset, and a dramatic double-struck 1961 D penny with sharp detail could easily enter the million-dollar realm if preserved in exceptional condition, and if we go even deeper into minting issues we find planchet errors. Like clipped planchets where a crescent-shaped piece of metal is missing because the blanking press cut the metal sheet incorrectly, and these clips come in various forms: curved clips, straight clips, ragged clips, and even double clips where two separate missing sections appear on the same coin, and these coins are extremely collectible, especially when the clip interacts with the date or mint mark. And lamination errors where the metal surface peels, splits, or flakes are also present on 1961 D cents because impurities in the planchet metal strip could cause the copper to separate or tear during striking, creating unusual texture and dramatic peeling effects that collectors appreciate. And then there are die cracks and cuts, among the most visually appealing errors for many collectors, because they represent the physical breakdown of the die itself, and a cut occurs when a chunk of the die breaks off, leaving a large raised blob or missing design element on the coin, and 1961 D has some extremely impressive cut varieties, with large die breaks near the rim, over the date, across Lincoln's bust or above the motto, and these dramatic die states are highly valuable, particularly in high-grade mint state condition. And then we have misaligned die strikes, tilted die strikes and worn die impressions, which although not always high-value errors, can be incredibly rare at extreme levels, and occasionally a severely misaligned 1961 D with dramatic design distortion will attract intense bidding, especially if combined with other errors, and the culmination of all these possibilities forms the basis for why certain 1961 D cents have been valued at $2 million, because the rarest examples combine multiple major errors, impeccable condition, historical minting anomalies, visual appeal and extreme rarity. And imagine finding a 1961 D small die crack variety paired with a massive RPM, combined with a dramatic double die, preserved in a flawless mint state grade. It would be one of the rarest Lincoln cents ever known, and the market would drive its price far beyond ordinary expectations. And what makes this story even more captivating is that millions of ordinary people have jars or bags of old pennies from the 1960s, often untouched for decades, and somewhere hidden within those piles lies the possibility of finding one of these elusive treasures. Because most collectors in the early 1960s did not recognize the long-term value of minor varieties and errors, and almost nobody saved high-grade rolls specifically looking for RPMs or double dies, and that means the survival rate of gem-quality error coins from 1961 D is extremely low, making the few that exist far more valuable today, and this scarcity is the driving force behind the $2 million valuations attached to the rarest examples. And as time continues to pass, more coins are damaged, lost, spent, corroded or mishandled, meaning the pool of surviving gems shrinks even further, raising the value of the finest remaining coins. And this is what inspires roll hunters and collectors to continue searching endlessly, examining thousands of pennies under magnification, hoping to spot the magical combination of factors that turns an ordinary cent into a life-changing discovery. Because the 1961 D penny represents the perfect storm of historical context, minting practices, mechanical imperfections, human error, mass production pressures, die deterioration patterns and collector demand, and these elements together create an environment where a simple 1-cent coin can legitimately reach multimillion-dollar valuations. And for every collector who dreams of finding one, the message is clear: keep searching, keep learning and keep examining every detail, because treasures like the rarest 1961 D errors are still out there hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right pair of eyes to reveal their extraordinary worth.